It's a real January winter morning here at the main Edible Acres site. It's about 12 degrees right now. Last night was around 10 or 12 and very windy. It snowed a fair bit. Pretty darn cold. The theme of this video is to share some ideas about what's possible when it's this cold, how to move projects forward. I think it's really doable, and I think it's quite healthy for the mind, body, and land to do so. When it gets this cold, and it has been this cold off and on, the ground seizes up enough that I'm able to drive my truck on the soil in the woods here without being hurtful. So this is a time of year where I can use my truck to deliver locust posts and compost deep into the woods. Is it the best time of year to spread compost? Probably not. I'd be interested to hear other folks' ideas, but it is the best time as far as the soil being able to handle the pressure without compacting. So this is the time of year where I do a lot of fertility delivery for future production. I put some little piles of compost around the hazels here in the woods, and I expect a number of hundreds of freeze-thaw cycles to still take place to loosen up that material, and it'll wash into the soil as the hazels wake up. It doesn't need to go in right away. You can see they're getting ready to set a lovely crop for next year. This is also the time of year where I'll go through with loppers and not prune the plants I care about, but prune the competitor plants around them without pulling and tugging and ripping things around. So I went through and cut right at ground level some of the gray bark dogwood and wild grapevines and other elements, knowing that snow will land on them and pin them to the ground, and they'll start to decompose in the spring. It doesn't have to be huge movements of material, but just some pruning and liberating of some of the keystone plants that we have in the woods here. I also find that, yes, we do have a really solid crust of ice. It almost sounds, when you hit the ground with a shovel, like it could be asphalt or it could be earth, you don't know. But you put a little force into it, and that crust might only be 2 inches or 4 inches thick. And so digging down through, I'm able to do some pretty heavy physical labor without breaking a sweat. In fact, in the coldest times of winter, like below 10 degrees, the challenge of staying warm enough to be comfortable is met and satisfied by doing really intense, hard physical labor. I've recently learned about Wim Hof, who's a fellow who talks about cold immersion and deep breathing in the winter. It seems real and seems therapeutic, but the lens that they look through is about, sitting on a mountaintop or sitting in a cold place. It's recreational. I think you can actually do really serious, hard physical labor in what is brutally cold times and breathe very deeply and get some stuff done while you boost your immune system and all that. So last night, right before sunset, it doesn't look like much, but I was cutting through the ground in between these hugel mounds and capping them with soil from the walkways. Just doing some rough sketch. I'm not expecting to do perfect fine work here, but 2 hours of that work in the dead of winter is 2 hours of it in the warmth of spring that I could be doing other more gentle work. I've also found this time of year to be beautiful for weaving debris walls, reinforcing walls of branches and cuts from trees or from felling trees that I'm not turning into charcoal, weaving them in to make windbreaks, to make wildlife deflectors and corridors, but also creating spaces for the wild beings to settle in. You look out on a 10-degree morning and you see squirrels looking for food, and the idea of them being able to rest is quite nice. In fact, let me look at this in more detail. This warms my soul to see that to folks that live in very deer-laden areas, you might know what this is. But you'll see that the layup of all this debris has created a very strong, focused corridor. The deer move through this space. They often sleep under that white pine. They have done so for almost 9 years now, 10 years. Groups of 5 or 10 might sleep there overnight. And last night, very clearly, that is the shape of a deer's body that laid in the snow, melted the snow, and most likely she was enjoying the protection from this pile of debris from winds that come from the northwest, She was sleeping in a wind shelter right here, protected from the driving winds, close to a corridor that she walks every day, with a big, beautiful grandma white pine over her to say goodnight. This corridor is planted out with persimmons, and I think most of them have fallen by now, but they probably have a few last goobers on the ground that they can nibble in the morning. So doing this kind of work in the winter for the sake of the wilds, boy, can't get much more pleasant than that. The window to set locust posts in the ground is still narrowly open. Post hole digger has some very sharp leading metal cutters, and once you punch through that 2 to 4 inches of ice, you can get down into some melted soil. In fact, these posts I set the other day when it was a little warmer, and the limiting factor was not that the ground was frozen, but that the water table was too high in this area for me to pack it tight enough. So I had to stop for a little while. But going through with a draw knife and peeling bark with vigorous efforts in a freezing morning, it's one way to warm yourself up and get some things moving forward. Felling and organizing stems like these ash all throughout the woods, so they're ready to make the top rails of some beautiful trellises, is some work you can do. If you live in a really cold place, the winter is a beautiful time to rest and recoup. Don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting you have to work all through the winter, but I find when I get a little tired of the cold and the overcast, we live in an area that gets very little direct sunlight in the winter. Being able to make headway on things is really rewarding. It feels very therapeutic. I feel like my immune system's much stronger. I get to do the Wim Hof stuff without just sitting around. Wim Hof with some planting involved. Anyway, I'm a huge advocate of being out and productive in the brutally cold winter landscape of the Northeast. And hopefully in this video, folks that live in a place where you've got exciting ideas for what you can do with your permaculture dreams, maybe you bundle up with your loved ones and your kids or your friends and you get out there and see what you can accomplish when it's this cold. One thing I know you can't do when it's this cold is make very long videos. Maybe that's for the best. My old iPhone is saying, please put me in a pocket, please bring me inside. It's just about dead. So there's some ideas for the cold, cold, cold. Hope you're staying warm and feeling productive and great. Thanks for watching.